everyone. Welcome to the U.S. Open Health Desk presented to you by Mount Sinai. I'm your host, Shauna Ryan, and joining us today is Dr. James Gladstone, co-director of sports medicine at Mount Sinai Health System. Dr. Gladstone, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Well, there are many different types of courts that athletes can play on, and they can directly influence the effects that tennis has on your body. So in today's show, we're going to talk about those effects and also how people can prepare to play on different kinds of environments. And I'd love to start by, can you just describe to us the different types of courts there are to play on?
Sure. There are basically three different kinds of courts. There are hard courts, like we have here at the U.S. Open, which are either concrete or asphalt based and then painted over. There are grass courts, which are the ones we have at Wimbledon. And then there are clay courts, which are at the French Open, Roland Garros.
Yeah. So hard courts are obviously the most common, so I'd love to start there and ask, what kind of effects can those courts have on you physically when you play on them?
The different courts affect both the speed of the ball, the bounce of the ball, and the effect on the player. So clay courts typically are the slowest moving ones. The ball bounces higher, you have a little more time to set yourself up, plus you can slide on the clay, which makes it a little more comfortable going after balls. Hard courts are probably the toughest, the easiest to maintain physically, but the toughest in terms of playing them. It's got a quicker bounce, it's got a harder surface, and physically it's more pounding on the player themselves. And you have the grass courts, which are nice to play on. It's probably the fastest and most applicable to players who like to serve and volley, but a little less predictable based on how the grass is cut, whether you get any divots in it. And we've all seen Wimbledon at the beginning of the tournament where it's all nice and pretty and green, and at the end of the tournament where certainly at the baseline it's all brown.
Yeah. So obviously the hard courts can be a little bit more demanding physically on you. Is there any way that you can prepare, anything that you can do to minimize the effects that hard courts can have on the body?
Well, serious players have different shoes for different courts, based on the traction of the shoe, based on the cushion of the shoe. And then also, if you're going to be playing a lot on hard courts, you want to be physically conditioned for it, which means you have to work on your stretching, be flexible, and you have to work on your strength because there's a lot more vertical loading. In fact, they've done a number of studies along the way that have looked at this kind of thing, and hard courts have anywhere between 4 to 8 times more physical force going through your body during the course of a game.
Can we talk a little more about the clay courts that you described, also the hard true and the effects that it has on the body? Any ways that you can prepare for playing on those kinds of courts?
Well, those are the ones where people do a lot more sliding and slipping, and so those are the ones where you got to be really careful about your groin and your hamstrings, because some of those times when you chase a ball and you stretch out and your legs get spread, you almost go into a split. So someone like Novak Djokovic obviously is incredibly flexible and is perfect for those kind of courts.
It seems like it's not as demanding on the body, those clay courts, but that, there are some disadvantages in terms of you straining things if you kind of stretch out too long.
Yeah, not as physically demanding. You have more time to prepare yourself. The ball tends to bounce higher. Sometimes a little less predictable, depending on what happens to the court. You get a few little divots in it. The ball can take funny bounces, so you have to be ready to change direction quickly. But overall, the interesting thing with clay is that because the ball's going slower, the rallies are somewhat longer. And so issues with overuse injuries play up a lot more.
Yeah, and a lot of cardio there too as well, if you're going for that long.
A lot of cardio, oh yeah.
So you got to be physically fit.
Rallies can be up to 20, 30 strokes.
Wow. Well, we said that the grass courts are the least common, but if you do get a chance to play on them, any ways that you would suggest that you prepare to play in that environment?
So there, it's almost like a combination of the two. You got to be ready to be quick and agile, because sometimes with grass you don't quite know where the ball's going to bounce. It tends to bounce lower, skid more, so you got to be ready. There's a lot more bending. Work out your lower back to try to prepare yourself for that. Get your legs moving more quickly.
A lot to learn here, Dr. Gladstone. Thank you very much for coming by, helping us understand all these courts, making sure we're prepared no matter what environment we're on.
My pleasure. It's always fun.
And thank you so much for stopping by. Don't forget to check out usopen.org throughout the entire tournament for more tips from our experts from Mount Sinai. Until next time, I'm your host, Shauna Ryan. We'll see you right here on the U.S. Open Health Desk, brought to you by Mount Sinai.